Welcome back to the second half of my conversation with Dr. Ayelet Fishbach, a renowned behavioral scientist and author of Get It Done: The Surprising Lessons from the Science of Motivation. In part one, we explored the foundations of motivation, why goals feel like chores that fail us, how framing, identity, and choice shape our follow-through. Now, in this deeper dive, the second part of my conversation with her, we shift from understanding motivation to engineering it. Because here's the truth. Most of us don't fail from a lack of ambition. We lose steam in the messy middle, get distracted by immediate rewards, or forget to savor the process. But as Ayelet shows us, motivation isn't something we have to wait for. It's something that we can design deliberately and practically. So whether you're trying to finish what you started, find that spark again, or close the gap between intention and action, this conversation is packed with science-backed tools and real-world insight. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to the Good Leadership Podcast, where we explore the stories, strategies, and insights of thought leaders who inspire us to think differently and lead better. Through candid conversations and expert perspectives, we dive into the challenges, breakthroughs, and practical lessons that shape exceptional leadership. You outlined 3 strategies for boosting intrinsic motivation, right? Make it fun, find a fun path, or notice the fun. Which one of these do you think people most often overlook, and why?
Recently I had a conversation with a young employee that told me that she's looking for a job that she will not have to think about when she's done working. And I thought, well, you really don't know what psychology says about how to keep yourself motivated and happy. Okay, if your goal for your job is something you don't need to think about, okay, if instead you engage in how do I make my job something I do want to think about. I'm excited to think about. How do you notice whatever it is that you might like about it? Okay, now maybe your job is boring, and many jobs are boring, but if you can focus on the elements that are interesting, that are fun, maybe there is someone there that you like. Okay, yeah, maybe there is a task that is more rewarding. If you can focus on that, this is often not something that people intuitively do and can really increase intrinsic motivation. To give you a research example, we found, and these are studies led by Turnwald, we found that when people think about healthy food, they often don't focus on the enjoyment. Okay, they focus on the health benefits. They use emotional language such as it's yummy and it's exciting when they describe unhealthy food. Okay, they basically undermine the motivation to eat healthily by not using emotional language when talking about healthy food, by not getting excited about it. So if you can just focus on how delicious and exciting berries are, you will eat more berries.
I've seen that myself as well. That piece is often overlooked, the notice the fun. People, I often assume that fun has to be built in, but I forget to pause and savor those enjoyable moments that are already happening. For example, solving a problem or getting lost maybe in some creative work, I don't really realize those fun moments unless I reflect on that joy. They don't register to me as motivational fuel, but being present to those small satisfying moments, I find, builds that positive feedback loop that keeps me going and sustaining my motivation on that task.
Absolutely. And let me clarify here that I do not think that life is a party and everything is fun and there are like no difficult moments. This is not true at all. Okay? I study motivation, and many of the things that we are trying to achieve are very hard. Okay? And the obstacles are there, and we need to deal with difficult family situations and financial situation and so on. So when I say that we need to bring the excitement and the fun and the positive emotion, this is not a recommendation to sit on the beach and eat ice cream all day long. We need to be working. We need to take care of the people around us, of our selves, and it's often hard. But if we can find the more enjoyable way to do that, we have a better chance.
Well, sometimes, though, even the most exciting goals lose their spark. If someone feels stuck in a goal that no longer excites them, what's the best way to rekindle that intrinsic motivation or know when to let it go?
That's a really important question because some goals we do need to let go of. Okay, we grow, we change. In particular, we see there's, at the later parts of life, people can maybe no longer do the things that they used to do. Maybe they don't have the physical strength. Maybe they're just busier. Okay, maybe as a manager, you just have too many responsibilities and things that you used to do, you can no longer fit on your plate. So I encourage people to very much think about their goals. Okay, think about what you put on your plate and what should be taken off your plate. Okay, evaluate your goals. Do they serve you? Are they still important for you? Do they fit with each other? Often we lose the spark, you said, okay? We lose our motivation because this goal doesn't fit with other things that I want to do in my life, okay? I got this like new job where I need to get up in the morning and get up early in the morning, and then exercise in the morning no longer works. I need to change it, okay? I need to take care of my health and particular physical health in other ways, or maybe I need to change my job. Okay, so this is one reason we forget about our goals. We ditch them because we never quite evaluated them, because they don't quite fit with everything that we are trying to do. Another reason is that some goals are just too long term. Okay, take with saving for retirement. You start this in your 20s, and now you have like, your life to do that. And when something is like so far and so long term, it's just hard to stay motivated. Okay, you forget about it. Okay, your attention moves to something else. And so sub goals can help. If you have an annual goal, try to make it a monthly goal or a weekly goal. You want to do well maybe for the rest of your life, okay? But what do you want to do this week? Okay, what are your goals for today? This is easier than the very remote long-term goals.
Some great insights. I've heard leaders say reconnect with your original why, because what made the goal matter in the first place could be instructive to know. And sometimes the goal itself is still meaningful, but maybe the approach needs a refresh. So try a new strategy, a partner with someone, or try to gamify the process. But realize that if the goal no longer aligns with your values or identity, like you mentioned, it's okay to let it go. And it's nice to have that reframe of letting go isn't quitting, it's just making space for something more aligned with what you want at that current time.
Letting go is often not quitting, is graduating.
What another vulnerable moment in the goal pursuit is the middle. Our excitement always wanes in the middle. The initial excitement fades, the finish line feels far away. So let's talk about the common challenge of staying motivated in the middle of any goal, and what can we do to helpfully increase our motivation during that middle stage, which is such a fragile point in goal pursuit.
Yes, we start many things with excitement. Okay, my boss just showed up. We had a group meeting. We are going to do it. Okay, everybody is ready and willing to do the work. As we make progress and approach the end of the goal, again, you see the people are excited. It is great to finish something. It's great to get to the finish line. In the middle is when we see lower motivation. Finish nothing is easy, but it's easier to start and finish than to maintain motivation while we pursue the goal. We see that people both drop their goals and cut corners. Okay, they just don't do it as well. Okay, you start your workout and you pay attention to your body and everything is done right. Toward the end again, work hard and do it right. And in the middle, you might hurt your back because you don't pay attention to how you do things. The solution, well, make middle short. I, I mentioned before, if you can make it a daily goal, now a weekly goal, this is better. If you have long goals, there is more of a middle, and it's easier to lose motivation. So make a plan for sub goals, and then the other solution is monitoring progress, such that it's easier to stay motivated. Basically, look back at how much you achieved initially, and then look ahead at what is left to achieve once you pass the midpoint.
Another tool that you mentioned that's been helpful for me in the book was reframe the present as a beginning or an end. For example, if you're changing your eating habits, think of your lunch choice as happening at the end of the morning or at the beginning of the afternoon rather than in the middle of the day. I love that reframe.
I love that you mention it. I would say that a lot of the strategies involve what we psychologists refer to as framing. Think about it in a certain way. Okay? Convince yourself to think about your goals in the way that best serves you.
And how we track our progress during those dips also makes a big difference. The book highlights two ways to monitor progress: the half full versus the half empty, right? What we've done so far or what we have left to do. How do these impact motivation, and when should you choose one versus the other?
Basically, you set a goal, okay, you set it correctly, okay, you are excited about it, you have uncertain incentives, everything is set up for success. You know the why, not just the how. Okay. And now you have to sustain your motivation. That is, you need to monitor your progress. Okay. As it turned out, it is easier to stay motivated if you monitor progress in terms of the glass half full or quarter full or 10% full at the beginning, and later on switch to what is empty. Now, it's really intuitive if you think about it in terms of numbers, at least for me. Okay, let's say that you are going to get a college degree and it takes 4 years. If by the end of the first year you think that you have already like did 1 year, this is more motivating than think that you still have 3 years ahead of you. The next year would feel like you are doubling the progress. Okay? You will now have 2 years instead of three. Okay, if you think about this, same next year as reducing the gap from 3 years to just two, this is not quite doubling. Okay, this is less. Okay? Now, toward the end, it switches. Okay, now let's say that you finish 3 years of college and you can think about the next year as getting you the 100 college degree. Okay, this is more motivating than think about it as adding another third or a fourth. Basically, any progress would look like it's more significant. It makes a bigger impact on your life when you compare it to what is now smaller. Okay, either the beginning or the end. So hopefully I am able to convey why basically the psychophysics of this, like why it's more motivating to look back initially and then to look ahead at what's missing after the midpoint. If that did not convince you, okay, there is another process that is going on. At the beginning, you are not sure whether you can do it. Okay, you just started college. I don't know if I can get a college degree. That seems hard. So looking at success as well, that builds commitment. Hey, I can do it. I already completed my first class, okay, or my first semester. Toward the end, you already know you can do it. You've been doing it for a long time. Okay. Now, what's more motivating is reminding yourself, Charles, you're not quite there yet. Don't relax yet. There is still some distance to go.
Another huge area, which kind of touched upon it at the beginning of our conversation, is temptation. And you emphasize that resisting temptation is easier when we focus on our overarching identity and values. So how can we as leaders, as individuals, strengthen that identity so we can show up better in that moment of choice so we don't choose to be tempted and veer off course with our goals?
Yes. So there are several effective strategies to overcome temptations. Okay, we now briefly touched this at the beginning of the conversation when we said that just fantasies of success are much less effective than actually predicting the obstacles and having a plan. And part of the obstacles are the temptations. Okay, so dreaming about eating healthy food, this is not going to do much if you anticipate that there will be a temptation to eat unhealthily. And at that point, this is what I'm going to do. You are better set to be successful. But in terms of identity, when we connect something to our identity, we are more willing to consistently engage in that. Okay, the action seems different. So, to give you an example, let's say that I'm tempted to do something that's not quite ethical. Okay, cut corners or maybe cheat a little bit. Right? If I think about it as a one time, I will just cut corners. This one time, I will just cheat once, whatever. Okay, most people are comfortable with that. But if I think about this in terms of my identity, well, I'm not a cheater. I'm not the person who cut corners. Okay, now I think about all the behaviors that I display, and I don't want to be that person that does things the wrong way. Here's a now in my class, I sometimes run this exercise. Well, every year I run this exercise where I ask people questions such as, "Would you return to the store a shirt that you were already wearing? Would you check your phone in the middle of a heart-to-heart conversation with a friend?" And when people think about doing these things just like once, then most of them say, "Yeah, I would do that." But now when I connect it to your identity and ask you, are you the kind of person who's doing this? Okay, are you going to always do this? This is when people realize that no, I am not this kind of a person. Okay, if it's about my identity, then I don't do it.
I love how you bring that into the fold. And a lot of leaders also use a strategy, and I wanted to get your insight, your thoughts on this is connecting it to the future self, because temptations, they really reward you in the present. And if you can think more about your future self and why you're doing that and connect deeper to that future self, that also sometimes helps them to avoid these temporary temptations that are willing, that they're willing to do to sacrifice their goal for something in the moment.
This is, by the way, an idea that started in philosophy, not actually in psychology. And philosophers were intrigued by this future self because, in a way, that's not you. Okay, why should you save money for the person that you are going to be in 10 years? That's not you. That's another person. Why would you care about that person? Okay, why would you work hard so that this future person will get promoted? Okay, or will get somewhere nice in life. And the idea is that, well, we work for this person because we feel connected to them, because our future self feels like it's not a stranger. Okay, it is me. And interestingly, there are individual differences. Okay, some people feel very connected to this future person that they are going to be, and so they are really willing to work hard today, okay, and put money aside for that future person. Other people are much more in the moment. Okay, like the person that I'm going to be in 10 years, like who cares? I don't know a person, I'm not going to do anything for them. And these people struggle more. So again, I'm getting to how do you motivate yourself? Well, one way is to envision that person and be sympathetic to this person. Okay, care for this person. Is a person that should be very dear to you.
Another thing that I notice a lot of leaders do is that they have different comments or thoughts on sharing their goals publicly to increase commitment. Some people feel like it's an accountability mechanism, it helps. The other set that I've heard, or the other common answer, is when I share it, I feel like I've accomplished it and it makes me less motivated to actually go through the steps to accomplish that goal, because now people are giving me kudos or some acknowledgement that I'm, part of the way there when I haven't even started. So, what's the psychological mechanism behind this? And are there times it's better to keep your goals private?
Probably so, but not private in the broader sense, but maybe private from certain people. Now, I'm less concerned with what you refer to as basically a licensing effect that that saying will replace doing. Okay, that I announce my intentions and now I will not have to do this. Yes, there is evidence for this, but most of the time, for most of our goals, we actually see that when people make the public commitment, they are more likely to follow through. Now, part of it is the commitment. Okay, I announce it to the world, and now I need to follow through and show my friends and family that I do that. Part of it is that you get support. Okay, if I tell my family that this is going to be a very difficult week at work, they are going to be more supportive. They are going to say things such as, you probably need to stay late, and how can we maybe help you with that? Whereas pursuing the same goal would feel quite different if they are unaware, and I feel more torn between my uh, goals for my family and work. Okay, so part of it is really to get support. Now, you ask whether there are times when you don't want to share your goals, and I would say, given the where I come from and given that my research is more about goal support, don't share it with someone who is not going to be supportive. If you feel that they are going to nag you and not be nice about it, then don't tell them. Don't tell your parent that you are planning to have a child if they are now going to ask you every month what's going on and make you feel bad. But tell them if you feel that they're going to be sympathetic and supportive and encouraging, and be there for you when things maybe don't go as smoothly as you were hoping for.
I've seen that myself, that when we tell others about the goals, we invite social accountability. That means we're more likely to follow through because we don't want to disappoint or lose face. Sharing also for me strengthens identity, right? Because then I'm not the kind of person who commits to this, but it's not always the right move. Sharing can, like you mentioned, trigger anxiety, judgment, unwanted pressure. It can even backfire. So you need to be selective on who you share that with. And you're right, if they're not going to be supportive, then it's best not to share that goal with them in the first place. Before we end today, I'd love to just cover two more topics that I think are important for motivation. One is the power of self-talk. How we talk to ourselves during challenging moments can make or break our motivation. What does helpful self-talk actually sound like?
Yeah, the person who studied that more than anybody else is Ethan Kross. Ethan also taught me how to talk to yourself, and the best way to talk to yourself is using some distancing. Okay, so instead of me saying, "You moron, how did you mess up that?" you should refer to you by name and say, "Ayelet, why did you mess it up? What happened at the moment when you were not paying attention or you were not following through?" And what happens is, when you use your name, when you refer to yourself almost as someone else, you kind of take the distance that allows you to see the forest, okay, to understand the why. And I mentioned it before that we see in general that it is easier to stay motivated and know your goals where you take some distance from them, when you see the entire picture. It's even easy to see the connection between various goals, to understand how they all make your identity if you take some distance. And self-talk, to the extent that it is being done with some distancing, allows you to be more calm, be more objective, look from the outside, and give advice to that person that is you.
Often the biggest challenge isn't knowing what we want, it's actually doing it. The gap between intention and action can feel impossible to close. So even with all these strategies that we've mentioned, follow through remains a challenge for many. It's not a lack of goals that hold us back, but that lack of follow through. Why is it so hard to act upon our goals that we generally care about? And what are some practical strategies that you can offer that help with that follow through?
It's hard to follow through But part of why we experience this difficulty is because we often just want a lot. Okay, and so it's not that we don't make progress. It's not that we are unmotivated as much as our expectations are so unrealistic. So let me pause and say that many people tell me that they are unmotivated, that they cannot get themselves to do things, and some people really have a problem. Many people have a problem of unrealistic expectations. Okay, so I can help you do more, but I don't expect that you will not be self-critical when you do more. Okay. Putting this aside, I would say that one problem with following through is that we all have multiple goals. Okay? And they often feel to compete with each other, to contradict each other. We often feel like we are torn between the different things that we are trying to achieve. And a lot of the work on motivation is trying to make connections between these goals. We all have health goals, family goals, financial goals, and then we each have our idiosyncratic goals. Okay, some of us need to lead, we need to run a marathon, and some of us want to volunteer. So we have this collection of goals, and unless we find connections, it is basically what I refer to as a terrible buffet meal. You know what is a terrible buffet meal? Is when you just like put everything that looks delicious, but together it's terrible. So before you put anything on your plate, look at all the options, okay, and think which foods go together. Same for your goals. Okay? How do we connect them? How can we pursue them simultaneously? Okay, how can we do something that both helps our work, our career, and our family? Okay, that makes us healthy without spending too much money. Okay? How can we combine these goals? And once we combine them, and once we find intrinsic motivation, that is the way there is exciting. It is much more intuitive and much less daunting.
When I've talked to many leaders too, that follow through is hard because distractions, competing priorities, like you mentioned, and discomfort of effort can get in the way. Even when we care deeply, the present moment often tempts us with easier, more immediately rewarding options. And that's why, like you mentioned in the book, designing supportive environments and routines is so important because it helps bridge that gap between intention and action.
This is the basic idea of social psychology and much of the behavioral science. Change the context. If this context doesn't serve you, try something else. If you can't be productive at home, try the cafe. If the coffee shop doesn't work, go to the office. Find the context, find the people, find the framing that works for you, and be a scientist. Okay, collect data, see what works. I can give you 100 strategies. I have no idea what works for you. So, what are you going to try this week?
Well, thank you, Ayelet, for such an empowering conversation, one packed with insights, not just about what motivates us, but how to structure our environment, our thinking, and our habits to stay on track. And as you so powerfully put it, to motivate yourself, you should either change your circumstances or change the way you think about those circumstances. So thank you so much for the conversation today.
Thank you, Charles, so much for having me.
Remind our listeners how they can get in contact with you and learn more about your work.
Well, I'm Ayelet Fishbach. Go on my website, get the book, get it done. Shoot me an email, read my papers. I would love to connect with you.
Wonderful. Thank you again. And thank all of you. So as you move forward on this conversation, remember, ask yourself, what can I change about the way I work or the way I think about work to make success more likely? Because getting it done isn't about doing everything. It's about doing what matters on purpose and with clarity. And remember that knowledge alone won't change behavior. Only application will. I hope this episode has provided you with valuable insights. If it has, I ask you to share it with someone who would also benefit from it. If you've been enjoying and gaining knowledge from this podcast, then subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can find all the previous episodes of the podcast and additional learning resources. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify and leave up to a 5-star review.